14 days to get done in the least surprising result possible for that game. Everybody knew that was going to go long because it always goes long when KU has the late game. We had a great first game, and then KU comes out, was in control for a lot of the game, fell behind, and then Grady Dick showed up, and that was it. And KU ended up picking up the win. So we'll talk all about that game, what it means for KU, what we were most impressed by for KU coming up here in just a few moments. We'll also talk plenty of college hoops in the 5 o'clock hour. We never really did a college basketball season preview, Final Four predictions, things like that. So what better time than right after the real big splashy kickoff event of the season to talk about some of our expectations, teams we're hyped for, teams that maybe we are not so hyped for compared to the consensus. That's coming up in the 5 o'clock hour today. Of course, it's Wednesday. That means it is Wildcat Wrap-up Day, brought to you by Azura Credit Union. So, bottom of the 4 o'clock hour, Tim Fitzgerald is going to stop by from GoPowerCat.com for this week's Wildcat Wrap-up. K-State hoops in action this week. K-State football, obviously, big win over Baylor. Now a chance to win out and make it to Arlington for the Big 12 championship game. We'll talk to Fitz all about that. Plenty of NFL to get to today as well. Jordan Foote of Sports Illustrated will stop by the show coming up in just about a half an hour, maybe just under a half an hour, as we take a deep dive into the Kansas City Chiefs. And Isiah Pacheco, we already have all kind of gotten to a point where we believe he's the better option than Clyde Edwards-Helaire, but there are some stats out there that indicate maybe he's playing even better than we thought, or at the very least, he's been even better than Clyde Edwards-Helaire than we had previously thought. So we'll get to that coming up in the 4 o'clock hour. We've, of course, got your 580 Sports Talk headlines. We will have today's What Is Wrong With You, and we'll play some One Gotta Go later on this hour. It is all coming up right here on 580 Sports Talk today. And again, we would love for you to be a part of the show on the Big O Tires text line or in the comments on the YouTube live stream. But let's get right into it with last night's Champions Classic win for the Kansas Jayhawks over Duke. And I think that was a fun game as well, certainly if you were a KU fan, because you got to see a lot of guys play really well. And you only scored 69 points. It was a lower scoring game than even I thought it would be. But you still saw pretty much the entire starting lineup for KU have its moments. Jalen Wilson was a star. He's different. He looks like a different player, like a really special player right now.
It felt last night a little bit like it felt for Abaji last year in the Champions Classic, where it was very clear after the Champions Classic that Ochai Abaji was a different kind of player than he'd ever been before as a Jayhawk, and was capable of being their best player and carrying their offense, creating their offense, being the reason that they won. I think that Jalen Wilson had a very similar coming out sort of performance last night. He's always had this level of skill, but because he was on the team with Abaji last year, he didn't have to be that guy. You know, there are 2 first-round NBA draft picks on that team. Jalen Wilson didn't have to be the fulcrum of the offense. Last night, really for the bulk of the second half, he had to be, and he was. And the only reason that Duke's big run in the second half didn't put that game out of reach, because Kansas could not score if it was not right around the basket.
No.
And they couldn't get around the basket unless Jalen Wilson was making that happen. So it was a really outstanding performance, I thought, from him. And that was maybe the best thing about last night for KU on an individual level.
He's been so aggressive through the first few games of the season, which is huge. And would you like to see maybe a little bit more efficiency shooting the ball? Sure. You know, maybe not take 26 shots to get to 25 points, but he was aggressive. He played well defensively. I think that has been a clear uptick. And last year with Abaji in that first game, it was, oh my God, he erupted against Michigan State. And then after that, he continued to dominate against lesser competition to open up the season. This year, it's pretty much the same with Wilson, just in reverse order, that he was putting up 19, 21 points, 9 rebounds, 11 rebounds through those first 2 games against lesser opponents, and then did more of the same in the game against the tough opponent, this time Duke as well. So that is, I think, extremely encouraging. Grady Dick, we'll get to him specifically in a moment, but at the end of the game, when KU needed instant offense, he went on a 7-3 run on his own against Duke. I mean, he looked awesome at the very end of the game. Very Vinnie Johnson, the microwave-esque, just instant offense. Kevin McCullough, made a 3, missed a few that were just nowhere close.
Did he make 2 in the first half? Or
was it 2? It might have been 2.
Or did Wilson make the other 3? I don't remember. I think it was. I mean, they made those 2, and then they didn't make another one until Dick's 3 in the final, waning minutes of the game. So, also, the game occurred very late last night, and some of it is a little hazy because I got sleepy.
So, totally fair. 100%. My wife did not make it through the entire game. She went to bed.
Neither did mine.
At about halftime. But you had him making defensive. He is just so smooth defensively. It is unbelievable how smooth he is defensively. You had KJ Adams making plays. He is not an offensive weapon necessarily, but one of the most important plays of the game was a tough through contact layup at the very end that extended the KU lead back to 5 points. He was awesome defensively. He was so energetic getting after the ball. You had Dwan Harris, who I know he's not going to flash because he's not a scorer, but man, he is so good. I don't know if there's any player in the country that is asked to do a specific thing who does it as well as Dwan Harris does. Do not turn it over, facilitate, play amazing on-ball defense. He did all of that yesterday, to a T. Uday did not have a great game, but I thought his energy was good at least. I thought Zuby Ejiofor actually had a really good day in the limited run he got. You just saw so many solid performances against the Duke team that's going to be good this year. I think they're young. Their coach is crazy young. John Shire looks like a child. Like, I know he is. I mean, he's what, mid-30s?
He's my age,
yeah,
man.
He looks so young. And maybe that's just because I'm used to seeing Coach K, like, withering away on the sideline, getting a minute closer to death every single play. But, I mean, John Shire looks so young. And he is young. He's never done this before.
No, he's
at this level.
Never been a head coach of any kind before. This is all brand new to him, and I thought he did a really nice job putting players in a position to succeed, taking advantage of the mismatch that Duke had with regards to their size, putting Kyle Filipowski at the 3 and letting him do damage by being 3 inches taller than anybody who was trying to guard him. Hunting the mismatch with Grady Dick and playing Dick off the floor for a big chunk of that second half. I thought Duke showed last night that they are well coached, that they are really talented, and we haven't really seen 2 of their best players. Like Derek Whitehead hasn't played yet, or that's not his name.
Lively.
Derek Lively.
Yeah.
He played last night.
But sparingly.
Sparingly. He's still coming back from a calf injury. Whitehead is the one who hasn't played at all yet, and they're hoping to have him back soon. But like, the Filipowski kid can really play. And boy, I don't know what Duke hate post Coach K is going to look like, what forms that is going to take, if they are going to be as easily detestable as they were for so many years. But a big white kid with sauce named Kyle playing for Duke seems very, very prepared to be one of the more hated players in America.
And he's awesome. Like, he's got skill.
Yeah,
he's got finesse.
He's really good.
He looks like he's going to be a stud player. But again, you know, the appearance, the fact that he is good, the fact that he plays for what will probably be a pretty good Duke team.
The mannerisms.
He would not shut the hell up. Every single foul. Some of them iffy. The officiating was garbage. It was garbage, trash officiating. And that's not just because KU barely got a call in the second half. Some of those fouls they called on Duke in the first half were inexcusably bad. The flop, give me a break. Like, that was a horrible,
the flop,
truly awful
The
call.
flop was really bad. Like, the first in the series of charges that were called against them was really, really bad. It was not a particularly well officiated game. But the broader point about Duke, though, they're super talented.
Yes.
And you can tell that they're confident. And as their confidence grew in the second half, it felt like they had a chance to take control of the game and just use their size and their length as the advantage, because it was frustrating Kansas.
Oh, yeah.
Kansas couldn't get to the basket. Kansas couldn't bring the defense out because they couldn't make a shot from outside of 2 feet. But this is where having adults is a benefit. And that's what Kansas has that Duke doesn't have. Dudes who've played in games like this before. Duke has one guy, Jeremy Roach. And I think Jeremy Roach is a good player, when Jeremy Roach decided to make his impact on the game in the second half, he did hit 1-3, but he also tried to hit a hero ball 3 over Grady Dick. He got the Grady Dick matchup. He licked his lips. He sized him up. He stepped back, and he would have killed a fan in the third row if the backboard hadn't been there on the three-pointer that he ended up shooting.
It was major Caleb Love vibes from the national championship.
It really was.
Caleb Love said, it's Caleb Love time, and just started chucking in the second half of the national title game. Jeremy Roach looked like that, and he missed the shot about as badly as Caleb Love missed that one at the end of the national title game.
But that's a young team that doesn't know who its alphas are yet and doesn't have the experience of playing in games like this on the college level. And Kansas does. Jalen Wilson and DeJuan Harris. And even though he wasn't part of the national championship team last year, Kevin McCullers played a ton of big games, high stakes, high pressure games. And that, I thought, was most revealing in the way that Kansas just never seemed to panic.
Mm-hmm.
The game never seemed to get away from them, even as Duke was taking a lead. It never felt hopeless. It never felt like Kansas wouldn't make a run. They stayed composed. They played with a ton of poise. Even without their head coach on the sideline, Norm Roberts kept things together, thought he made subs at the right time. He pushed the Grady Dick button at exactly the right time late in that game. When Kansas, they're down 5, we absolutely have to get some offense. We sacrificed Grady Dick because defensively he was hurting us, but we need offense. We need the lid to come off the basket. We need somebody to make a three-pointer. And one thing Grady Dick ain't is scared. And he went out and he knocked down that 3 and had the 2 other finishes, one off the alley-oop, the beautiful scoop layup falling down. Just a bonkers finish. Showing you the confidence and the high skill level that he has. That'll be complemented really nicely with the poise, with the leadership, the veteran know-how around him.
Mm-hmm.
And the way Kansas closed out that game was super encouraging.
Our guy Michael Swain tweeted it the other day. He said that Grady Dick is just such a creative scorer. And I think we saw that in every which way in that game last night. In the first half, it was that baseline drive, up and under reverse layup he hit falling to the floor. The one you just mentioned from the second half, the alley-oop play was great, and it was a tough finish because there were a lot of dudes in the area. And then the three-pointer as well when KU desperately needed a 3. That ability to just score in an instant and bring a flurry on his own is, I think, the one thing that just skill-wise KU doesn't really have outside of him. Like, Wilson's a really talented offensive player. He is. He's not exactly, though, like, hey, we need 4 points in the next 30 seconds. Go get us a basket, like, at any point in the game. He's just more of a steady hand offensively, I think. And I think he's getting maybe more to that point where he can be instant offense because he's been so aggressive to start the year. McCullers not really that guy. The bigs don't really have that, and we know Harris isn't a scorer. Dick just out of nowhere can be the best player on the floor in an instant. And he was. And for a 2.5, 3-minute stretch at the end of the game, that's what he was last night. And that was the difference maker for KU. So I think right now, the only thing KU does not have in that starting 5, that core 5 group, is size. Because other than that, everyone is playing their role perfectly. I thought the defensive energy last night was awesome. And credit to Duke, too, because I think they played with some of that as well, especially when they got hot middle of the second half. But, man, I was really impressed with KJ Adams last night. I thought he played a really strong game defensively. Harris does his thing. That was one of my big concerns with this group, is just how would the pieces fit defensively? And there are going to be games, and, Baylor is the one that stands out the rest of the schedule where, all right, big men are going to be a tough matchup for this team. But you sort of alluded to it yesterday when we talked about the Elite 8 Duke game. Now, KU put Svi Mikhailuk, not known for being a defensive player, on All-American top 2 pick in the NBA draft, Marvin Bagley, but the system worked and the effort worked. That's kind of what we saw last night, I think, defensively. Also, the double block was one of my favorite KU highlights of recent memory. That was awesome.
I think they ended up with 11 block shots as a team, and Uday and Ejiofor contributed a handful of those. I thought they held their own. They looked playable to me. That was the one thing I was really worried about coming in, was that if KU tried to match Duke's size, that Uday and Zuby weren't going to be up for it.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought they both kind of looked up for it. I mean, they're not going to give you a lot on the offensive end right now. That much is pretty clear, unless they're catching lobs. they're not going to give you a lot. They're not going to make a lot of contested shots. They're not going to make that little Udoka baby hook. Like, they're not there yet as offensive players. But defensively on the glass, I thought they held their own. I thought they played fine. And I think that fine will be good enough because I think this KU team will be better playing small. I think fine for those reserve bigs will be good enough in the short term as they grow and as their games get more and more polished. But I didn't think they looked overwhelmed. They certainly, it certainly wasn't a stretch where I was like, okay, you got to get that guy off the court.
Mm-hmm.
Like, the only guy who had a stretch like that last night was Grady Dick, and that was more about what Duke did hunting him defensively. And look, teams that are that good on the wing are going to be able to do that. How many teams are there like that in the country?
Mm-hmm.
That are that good and that big?
Not many
on the wing. Like, maybe Baylor if this Keontae George is the real thing.
Yeah.
But I don't know who else that KU is going to play that's going to be able to exploit Grady Dick's defensive weaknesses in such a way that it plays him off the court. Like, there one or two teams in the nation that can maybe do that, and Duke is certainly one of them. Couple of thoughts from the Big O Tires text line from the 785. I assume this is a joke. Fire self.
So that is, I was reading some past texts. So I'm assuming this is a K-State fan texter.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a joke because KU's 3-0 with Norm Roberts. And hey, you got to give Norm credit because you're right.
Yeah.
He pulled all the right strings, pushed all the right buttons at the right time. Or maybe it is just a Bill Self-hater, which, I get. I think you got to give a lot of credit to Norm Roberts. He also probably knew, man, if we choke this game away, Bill is going to be on my ass all week, and I do not want that. So, no, I give him credit because I think he's done a really good job.
Another one from the Big O Tires text line from the 785. You guys just saying Duke is good because KU won. They only scored 67 points.
And KU only scored 69.
Yeah, I guess speaking for myself here, I'm saying Duke is good because there's a 7th-ranked team in the country with the number 1 recruiting class in the country, and they got a bunch of future NBA guys. But
the top recruit of the group is barely playing.
Yes.
No, I mean, Filipowski looks like the real
deal. And the second best recruit is not playing. Again,
at all.
And it is, I don't know if it's pronounced Derek or Derek. It looks like Tariq, but with a D instead of
I think it's Derek.
So it is. They're both Dereks. I think you're right. It's Derek Lively. He's the one who barely played last night. And Derek Whitehead is the one who hasn't played yet. That's why I am saying Duke is good, because they are, in fact, good. They're really good. If you watched last night and your takeaway was, that Duke team isn't any good, I don't know what to tell you. You must have been watching a different game than I was.
And did they turn the ball over a lot? They did. Did they do some dumb things?
Happens
sure they did.
Every year in the Champions Classic. That's just baked into the Champions Classic experience that all 4 teams are going to do some dumb stuff, because particularly the ones that are freshman laden, like Duke and especially Kentucky are.
Yeah, you want to talk about a team that did some dumb stuff? What is Kentucky doing? Kentucky even has veterans.
Yeah.
Their best player is like 27 years old.
Yeah, they got Sheway and Toppin, and Severe Wheeler was all SEC last year, and they had no idea how to defend an endgame situation. No clue.
No,
that's a Coach Cal thing.
That's also true.
That's a Coach Cal issue more than anything else. But
2019, 2020, KU, best team, I think, clearly in America. The year of the tournament count canceled. KU turned the ball over 28 times against Duke.
I remember.
Devon Dotson, second team All-American, unanimous All-American nominee, had like 12 on his own.
Yeah.
Okay, like that happens.
These games get messy.
But I'm not like, oh my God, I love Duke. Like, I'm not a Duke guy. Jake's a Duke guy. Like, I don't really like Duke. I don't really care about Duke in the long run.
Mm-hmm.
That team's got a lot of natural talent. They've got some of the same problems they've had in recent years too, I think, that they'll have to overcome. But I don't know. Filipowski looked like a first-team All-American last night.
Yeah, he did.
3 games, 3 double-doubles so far.
Yeah, that's pretty good. No other Dukie's done that.
No.
And they've had some good players over their program's history. Don't know if you know. Yeah.
Just a few of those. We'll talk more college basketball throughout the show. We'll talk a little K-State coming up, bottom of the 4 o'clock hour. Tim Fitzgerald is going to join us. We'll also just kind of do a general look ahead to the college basketball season. We never ended up doing one right before games actually tipped off last week.
Didn't.
So, perfect time to do one. We'll look ahead to some of the big storylines. Who are we high on? Who are we not so high on for college basketball? That's coming up in the 5 o'clock hour. Later this hour, we'll talk to Jordan Foote. But first things first, we've got a quick round of One Gotta Go coming up next on 580 Sports Talk.
that we can stay. Goodbye.
You're ugly. You're disgusting. I'm going to kill you. Give me $200.
Well, gotta go.
Time for a quick round of One Gotta Go here on 580 Sports Talk before we get to Jordan Foote from Sports Illustrated to talk some Chiefs with us coming up in a few minutes. College football playoff rankings came out last night. I'm going to give you 3 instead of 4 for One Gotta Go today. And it's going to be like a good one gotta go. Not the usual bad. The usual, I'm going to kill you, give me $200.
One's coming with me.
One's coming with you. You get TCU, you get Ohio State, you get Michigan. Who has the best chance to beat Georgia? Because I think Georgia is clearly number 1.
Yeah, they are.
They're clearly the favorite to win it all. So of the other 3 teams currently in the top 4, who gives you the best chance?
Yeah, I want to say Michigan because I think they're the team that is built in the most similar fashion to Georgia, where they're not out there to try and outscore you. They're not trying to win pretty. They will win a game if you drag them into the mud. But they were very similar last year, and Georgia beat them to sleep. So I still think, though, it is probably Michigan because I just don't think that I don't think Ohio State would stand a chance. Like, I think Ohio State's too pretty. I don't think they're the kind of team that can win a fist fight, and Georgia turns every game into a fist fight. I think you'd see something very similar to what happened to Tennessee if Georgia played Ohio State. TCU, I think Ohio State, Michigan are better than TCU. So yeah. I guess my answer is Michigan, but big caveat here is that I feel like it might go the same way it went last year. And maybe this is just me saying Georgia has no equal, has no peer.
I think I agree with you on both counts. I think TCU deserves to be number 4 in the conversation right now. I think that is absolutely the case. But who on TCU's defense is going to stop Brock Bowers or Ladd McConkey or one of the 18-headed monster running backs that they have? Nobody. Maybe they're like the chaos monster and they can do something to just totally catch Georgia by surprise, but I sort of doubt it. I kind of agree with you. I think Ohio State is less likely to find success if they get out of their stuff. Meanwhile, I think Michigan has enough stuff they can do offensively to make some noise. I think both teams have talented defenses. I think Michigan's the better team right now. That's why I would have been putting them 2 instead of 3 recently. But I also sort of agree. I just think Georgia's playing a different sport right now. So I don't know if it would really matter. I mean, it's a matter of they're going to lose by 24 in a playoff game or 27 in a playoff game. Does it really matter in the long run?
My one gotta go might torture you a little bit here. I was watching last night and watching DeJuan Harris, how composed he played in the late stages of that game, and thinking about how Kansas is kind of point guard you over the last half decade or so. They have had a tremendous run of point guards. So of the last 4 starting point guards at Kansas, DeJuan Harris, Devon Dotson, Marcus Garrett, Devontae Graham, one gotta go. And I know you love all those guys.
I do.
And you can go ahead and this is whatever terms you want to put it on.
So Harris, Garrett, Dotson, and Graham. All right, Dotson was always my guy. So I'm going to keep Devon Dotson. That was my dude. And I think I feel like you have to keep Graham because leadership, offensive ability, I think you have to keep Devontae.
Best shooter of the group.
Best shooter of the group by far. Man, I think Harris probably has to go. The tough thing for Garrett is he was never a great scorer. He had to do it more his senior year. He was never a great scorer, but he was never a 1. He was a good facilitator for a 2, but he was never really naturally a 1.
Right.
But he was the best defensive player in the country, and he probably got robbed of winning that award twice. I probably take Harris out of the group, but man, that's close between the two of them. You could probably make an argument, and I think Bill Self might make this argument. Marcus Garrett is the best defender he's ever coached on the perimeter. So I think that probably gives him a nod over Harris for the 2 guys who don't really defend or they don't really score.
Yeah, I'm hard pressed to remember a better one. I would probably lean taking Garrett out because he's the least natural one of the group.
That's totally fair. Yeah. But who would you take out?
Yeah, probably Garrett.
Oh, okay, Garrett.
But again, I mean, that was the best defensive player in the country for a 2-year period. Yeah. I know he only won 1 national defensive player of the year in the COVID shortened year, but no, he was clamps, man. He had a seatbelt on every other point guard in the Big 12.
It really is an incredible run with those four. And then the one before was Mason.
National Player of the Year.
Because really, Graham was the secondary ball handler for a couple years. And then, 2018, obviously, that was a very special team. But Frank Mason was the undisputed National Player of the Year.
Yes.
It's unbelievable. And a lot of undersized guys. And they've done it differently, too. Like, Harris is not a speed guy. Like, he's not going to race you down the floor like Devon Dotson could, whose speed was really the game changer. And he was pretty good on ball defender, too. Harris is more of a defensive facilitator type. Garrett was an incredible defender. Devontae Graham could change a game in an instant. Kind of that instant offense we were talking about with Grady Dick, although that team in general was different because they had so many shooters. But yeah, that is tough. I love every single one of those dudes. I was watching that game last night, and I was like, oh, yeah, I've already hit the point of the season where I say I would take a bullet for every guy on this team, every single one of them. That's one got to go. We're going to take a quick break here on 580 Sports Talk. But when we come back on the other side of this timeout, our good pal Jordan Foote from Sports Illustrated is going to join us. We'll take a deep dive on the Kansas City Chiefs as they get ready to take on the Los Angeles Chargers this week. That's coming up here in just a few moments on 580 Sports Talk. Is Jordan Foote of Sports Illustrated joining us here on 580 Sports Talk. Awesome stuff as always. Such a great follow on Twitter if you're on social media. And of course, go check out Sports Illustrated's Chiefs Vertical Arrowhead Report. We're going to take a time out for our national and local news here at the top of the hour. But when we come back, why is Isiah Pacheco truly RB1? We'll tell you next. Now, 4 o'clock hour of 580 Sports Talk coming your way on this Wednesday afternoon. Brendan Dworzinski and Dan Lucero here with you. Appreciate you, as always, for being a part of the show on the Big O Tires text line, 785-272-9429. And also for those of you who are chiming in our YouTube comments as well. The best section of comments on YouTube, I think that is fair to say. If you've never spent time going down a YouTube rabbit hole, you probably haven't gone into YouTube comments before. Think of every awful political take you've heard, every bad tweet or insane Facebook post, multiply it by 10. That's most YouTube comments.
And
not ours, though.
And weirdly, all of them are posted on a video that is like the 10 greatest catches of Chris Carter's career or something like that.
Scorpions, Rock You Like a Hurricane lyrics video. What? Where did all these opinions come from?
The comments to songs, those are actually really pure in a lot of ways.
Half of them are, wow, haven't thought about this song since 2008. If you agree.
Some of them are like, wow, this song really changed my life. It made me see music in a whole new way. And it's like, How Bizarre by OMC.
Ooh, baby. That's a great song.
It is a good song.
That's a tremendous song. Oh, man. I'm going to use that as bump music later today.
I hadn't thought of that one in years. And then they mentioned it on Saturday Night Live this weekend. And
that's a great song. I used to like that one when I was a little kid. When you're a kid, you have regular songs that you just latch onto. That I loved that song as a kid. I don't really know why. And 1 Week by Bare Naked Ladies.
See, I probably liked that song when I was a kid. I can't listen to it anymore.
That's fair. That's entirely fair.
I can't. I probably had that. I think I had the CD. I think I had the Bare Naked Ladies CD. But to this day, the only Bare Naked Ladies I can really revisit is If I Had $1 Million.
That's a good one. It's All Been Done. That's all right. It's an all right
it was
song.
Fine. Yeah.
Decent drums in that song. Anyway, this has been Bare Naked Ladies Talk on 580 Sports Talk.
Changed my life.
Changed my life. Coming up this hour, we'll get to the Chiefs here in just a moment. Big thanks, as always, to Jordan Foote from Sports Illustrated for joining us last hour to talk all things Kansas City Chiefs. We've also got our What Is Wrong With You coming up this hour, plus Tim Fitzgerald is going to join us for our Azura Credit Union Wildcat Wrap-up. We've also got a comment that the Bare Naked Ladies did the theme song to The Big Bang Theory. I did not know that because I have watched that show a handful of times in my life.
That's a handful more than I've ever watched Big Bang Theory. But that really fits to me. That makes sense.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
That's my dad started watching that show a couple years ago. He's big into watching every episode of a sitcom 5 times through and then never watching it again.
Well, there's 7 different networks that carry it now in syndication.
Yeah.
The odds are good that an episode of Big Bang Theory or Law and Order will be on some channel.
Followed by NCIS. Also on 12 channels.
Yes. And yet the networks don't syndicate The Simpsons anymore. It's an outrage. FX is the only... I guess Freeform does some Simpsons.
Do they really?
Yeah.
Oh, I thought it was just FXX.
But then I get excited and I'm like, oh, cool, The Simpsons are on. And then it's something from season 26 that I have no desire to ever watch.
Where's your threshold?
Anything beyond season 14, I don't have a lot of interest in.
So that would have been 2003, 2002?
Yeah, probably 04. I stopped watching it regularly once I got into college because the old stuff was so good.
Yeah,
and
I get that.
Still catching up. That one was not allowed in the house when I was younger. So it took me a while to get there on The Simpsons, but I've probably seen every episode from seasons 1 through 10 a dozen times each.
See, that's interesting. I always assumed since you're such a big fan that you had been a day one, watched with your parents fan.
No.
Interesting.
No, it took me a while. I had a younger sibling, and that was part of it.
Oh, yeah.
That was part of my mom trying to do a little quality control on what media her children consumed.
Fair.
But once the floodgates opened, I became a bit of an obsessive. As anybody who's listened to me talk for any amount of time knows, I pretty much view life through the prism of the first 8 or 9 seasons of The Simpsons.
Just today, we were having a discussion in the office, and Dan made a Simpsons reference.
Yes.
We were talking about the McRib.
Yes.
Came up.
And it reminded me of, and this might have been a season 14, maybe even 15 or 16 episode where the Krusty Burger announces they're only doing the Rib Witch for a limited time, and Homer follows the Rib Witch across the country instead of going to see Lisa at the spelling bee.
I mean, relatable. I had 2 McRibs for lunch today. I get it. Don't forget, you are always welcome to chime in on the Big O Tires text line, 785-272-9429, or again, on our YouTube comments. Wanted to get to this, Dan. You found this stat, or these stats, earlier today about running backs and expected production versus actual production, and it's team by team in some cases, and that includes for the Kansas City Chiefs, who obviously went into this year, into training camp. We knew Edwards-Helaire was running back number 1, but Pacheco really garnered a lot of attention during camp.
They were raving about him right away.
Right away. Preseason, saw some good bursts from him. Going into the year, we saw a little bit of him. I think it was 12 carries actually in week 1, but that was mostly garbage time because the Chiefs dominated in that game. And then we just sort of gradually have gotten to this point where, hey, Edwards-Helaire is not really taking that step forward this year. He's pretty much the same guy he's always been. And hey, let's get Pacheco involved a little bit more, not just on kick return. And then this past week, Clyde Edwards-Helaire did not have a single carry in the game. He had 2 targets, no carries. Pacheco had 5 yards an attempt, and what was it, 81 yards for the game, 16 for 81, something like that.
I think that's right, yeah.
He has cemented himself firmly as the Chiefs' running back number 1 on the depth chart. But you found this, and I think this is fascinating. When you look at how the, down and distance and what kind of defense you're facing, what part of the field, all of that, where Pacheco is expected to have performed at so far this year and where he has actually performed is pretty stark. And it's especially stark in comparison to Edwards-Helaire.
So this comes from Ben Baldwin, whose statistical work we cite a lot around here. And it is kind of funny to cite the work of somebody as it pertains to running backs, a person whose URL of their website literally stands for Running Backs Don't Matter, rbsdm.com.
Yeah.
But this is a graph he put out on social media earlier, and obviously not a visual medium, can't see the graph. We'll try and explain this in a way that doesn't make your eyes glaze over. But the stat is yards over expected per carry. Now, how many yards you are gaining per carry more than you would be expected to have gained. Now, this is not a running back dependent stat. It's not or running back independent stat, because it depends on, the down and distance situation, depends on how well the play is blocked, all of those things. But those factors are all part of this stat. But Isiah Pacheco, in his small sample size so far, is averaging just shy of a yard more per carry than expected. And you might think that's not a huge deal, but over the course of a game, how much bigger a deal is 2nd and 6 than 2nd and 7?
A huge deal.
How much bigger a deal is 3rd and 2 than 3rd and 3? Like a yard at a time more per carry than you're supposed to be getting, that adds up over the course of a drive, over the course of a game, over the course of a season. Isiah Pacheco's yards over expected per carry is similar to the following guys. These are the guys that live in Isiah Pacheco's neighborhood on the graph. Kenyon Drake of the Ravens is very close. Saquon Barkley is right around that number. Kenneth Walker III, the presumptive offensive rookie of the year for the Seahawks, is around that total. Aaron Jones is just a tick above that total for the Packers. Dameon Pierce, another standout rookie for Houston. He is just below Pacheco's total yards over expected per carry. Clyde Edwards-Helaire is at negative half a yard over expected. So half a yard under his expectation per carry. The guys who live in Clyde's neighborhood, Melvin Gordon, Najee Harris, name a Ram, they're all there. Leonard Fournette, Mark Ingram. Like, that's not company you want to be keeping.
No.
When it comes to this season in the National Football League. So what we can determine from this stat is that Isiah Pacheco is making the most of the carries that he is getting, and Clyde Edwards-Helaire is doing so much the opposite of that it makes sense that the carry load has shifted in the way that it appears to, starting with the Jacksonville game. And I don't know how you felt about this, Brendan, but the Jacksonville game was the first one where it was like I get it with Isiah Pacheco. I see what the Chiefs must have been seeing. I see why they wanted to make this guy in particular their number one rushing option.
I would agree with that. And, we've talked about how the running game itself doesn't need to be great, but it needs to be effective. I think that's kind of to a T what Pacheco was in that game against Jacksonville. 16 for 81 is pretty solid. 5 yards an attempt. That's pretty good. Late in the game when you want to run out the clock and you trust that he's not going to fumble the ball. And that is a lot of trust because we talked about this on Monday's show. A lot of rookies, you fumble, you drop a pass, whatever it might end up being, you don't see the ball for a while. In some cases, you might not see the field for a while. The Chiefs had the confidence to go back to him and say, you're the workhorse. You're getting the ball down the stretch. You're going to keep getting handoffs throughout the game. And it paid off. And sometimes that burns you. Last season, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, early in the year, he had a couple of fumbles that were costly early in the season. They kept going to him. We know what Edwards-Helaire is at this point. We've already now got a rookie who's outperforming a guy in his third year, which is unfortunate because that guy who's in his third year was a first-round pick. But on the bright side of things, you've got so much more room for Pacheco to grow into being a little bit more patient with some of his runs as opposed to what he does do at times, which is just, I know I'm going left. I'm going to put my head down. I'm going to run as hard as I can. And sometimes that happens. And that's something that you can coach to be a little bit more effective over time, a little bit more efficient with your running lanes. There's a lot of room to grow for Pacheco. So the fact that he's already performing at this level has me pretty encouraged. And again, 7th round pick, you get 1 or 2 good years out of a 7th round pick. That's a win. That is a huge win for that draft pick. Looks like this is going to be your starting running back when it's all said and done for like 3.5 years at this point.
Tony Romo was really complimentary of the way Pacheco ran in Jacksonville against Jacksonville on the broadcast, talked particularly about how his pad level and how he keeps a really good pad level and runs hard and all those things. The vision is still a question. That's what has to improve the most for me. I think we see sometimes that vision is still a work in progress for him. We've seen that on kickoff returns, I think, most explicitly, where it feels like, I mean, I can't remember Isiah Pacheco getting to a second level on a kickoff return.
No.
Never mind the third level. Like, he's not even getting beyond.
He's on the ground floor.
Yeah, he's not getting beyond level 1 on some of his kickoff returns. But in Jacksonville, it felt like a step forward in that regard with his carries. It felt like he was getting to where the hole was opening up and he was running hard and he was getting some yards after contact. And that last run, consequential play of the game where he went off the left side and kind of dragged the ball, the tacklers a little bit and was able to extend his body over the pile and pick up the first down that effectively ended the game. I think that was a sign of the physicality that he comes with as well, because he's not a particularly big guy, but he runs really physical. He runs hard. He runs angry, I think, in a way to describe it. The thing that I feel bad about for Clyde Edwards-Helaire is I think a lot of what we have not seen from him are things that have either not been able to develop or things that have been taken from him due to injury. I think the injuries have kind of piled up for him in a way that has really cost him, because it looks like when you go to hit the turbo button on a video game and then you're out of turbo, like you just don't have any. That's what it's kind of felt like watching Clyde run for the better part of this season. He's had a lot of leg injuries. He had that high ankle sprain that cost him some time. And I do wonder, like, there's nothing catastrophic. Like, he hasn't had like the awful leg injury, and I'm not trying to speak that into existence. But,
although that one against the Saints his rookie year was pretty ugly.
It was. Yeah, that was the high ankle sprain I think we're talking about. But yeah, he hasn't had like the ACL blowout or anything broken or anything like that. But it just, watching him, and I brought up Cam Akers, or I brought up the Rams running game and how they're well below average. Cam Akers is the lowest guy on this graph in yards over expected per carry. Cam Akers is a guy that is coming off of an Achilles tear, but you watch him this year and the burst is gone. It's just not there. And for Clyde Edwards-Helaire, obviously, again, we're not talking about as significant an injury history, but those little ones, those little nagging ones have seemed to have added up to a point where he just can't get to that burst. He doesn't look like the same player he was at LSU, and he doesn't look like the same player he was in his rookie year. I thought there would be a better career for Clyde Edwards-Helaire. I'm still holding out some hope that there's something there, but more and more, you just wonder if that's anything you can get back. And if what he's lost is too much to overcome what Pacheco can potentially bring. And the other part of this, too, is the Clyde Edwards-Helaire thing was always not just, oh, this is what he's going to do between the tackles. This is what he's going to do when he handed the ball. But this is what he's going to do as a receiving back. Like you thought of him as a 3-down guy. He'd be an option for you on 3rd down. He'd be an option for you out of the backfield. Well, now the Chiefs have Jerick McKinnon to fill that role. And so not only has Clyde been passed up by Pacheco as a runner, he's been passed up by McKinnon in that role of catching the ball out of the backfield and being the reliable blitz pickup guy.
Yeah.
And that sort of leaves Clyde as a man without a country right now.
And, it's unfortunate because you can be, you can struggle with one element of running the ball, but if you've got other things, you can make up for it. Like Clyde's never really had great vision. Even that rookie year when he was successful, had 1,100 yards from scrimmage. Didn't have great vision, but he did have a little bit of something. He had a little shift, had a little wiggle when he had the ball in his hands. That made up for it. When you don't really have bursts and when you've had those nagging injuries that have slowed you down because he just doesn't look athletic out there right now, that really compounds onto not having something like great vision. Like, I don't think Pacheco has shown tremendous running back vision this season, but he's got a little bit more burst. He's got a little bit more strength that he runs with because he is just a bigger back. And McKinnon is obviously a different player as well. McKinnon doesn't have the size, but he does have the shiftiness and he's got the receiving ability. You look at Trent Richardson, he's like the epitome of not having any of that. He had no vision. He was slow. He just used to put his head down and run into his offensive line and hope he'd fall forward for a few yards. I wouldn't say Clyde is quite to that point, but it also is not exactly pretty for him right now. Look, it sucks, and at this point, I would be very shocked if the Chiefs picked up the 5th-year option on Edwards-Helaire. They'll have to determine that this coming offseason, so that's not an issue for now. But, look, again, if you've got a guy in Pacheco who is playing like this right now, and, you said maybe it doesn't seem like a lot on a down-to-down basis, but over the course of a game, 10 carries, that's 10 more yards. That's the difference between a punt and a field goal in some situations. That's the difference between got to go for the field goal or going for it on 4th down on the right side or on the plus side of the field. I mean, there's a lot that can contribute to that over the course of the game, or a lot of things that can affect over the course of a game. And if Pacheco is giving you that, you ride the hot hand. You keep riding it. There are probably not a lot of teams, too, where I would say it's a good thing to have 2 running backs who have very different skill sets, where it's obvious that they have different skill sets. Because it's sort of like the quarterback thing when college teams try to do we have a running quarterback and we've got the throwing quarterback. Well, that's dumb. That doesn't work most of the time because then that's what David Beatty used to do with Carter Stanley before he was forced to play him at quarterback against Texas, fittingly enough. And it was, Carter Stanley's in. Guess what? They're going to run quarterback sweep right. And it never worked. It did not work a single time his entire redshirt freshman season. But, or his sophomore season for that matter. But for the Chiefs, it does work because you've got the quarterback. You've got the passing game to make it work. Like, McKinnon's in. They're probably not running between the tackles. You still can't stop it, though, because you've got Mahomes throwing it. Well, Pacheco's in, so it might be RPO. It might be run action here. It really doesn't matter because if it is an RPO and they go with the pass option, you cannot stop it. So having Mahomes opens you up to having more of that black and white dichotomy, I think, at running back.
2 other things that are fascinating about this graph before we move on. The 5 highest rated running backs in yards over expected per attempt. And all of these running backs are averaging 1.5 yards more per carry than expected or better. Breece Hall, the rookie for the Jets.
Stud.
Travis Etienne.
Looks like a stud.
Nick Chubb.
Yes.
Khalil Herbert.
That is an interesting one.
And at the very top of the list, Tony Pollard. There is only one person on planet Earth that doesn't think Tony Pollard's a better option to carry the ball than Ezekiel Elliott. Unfortunately, that person is in charge of the Dallas Cowboys.
Like, even Mike McCarthy has to be thinking, I want to stop playing this guy when he's healthy, right? Like, Zeke does not have burst because he's another guy, a bunch of nagging injuries.
And he got old.
Yeah, he got old fast, and that happens to running backs.
Yeah,
like, you get old fast. He's still a really good, he's always been a good pass protector, so there's a spot for him in the league. but he's not. Pollard's fast, and he's good between the tackles, and he's good outside, and he can catch the ball. He's just a better player right now. That Herbert one is interesting because the Bears spent a high-ish pick on David Montgomery a couple years ago, who I think is a decent running back. But you look at this chart, Montgomery is much closer to Clyde Edwards-Helaire than he is to even Isiah Pacheco on this chart.
Montgomery's about bang average. Elliott is below average when it comes to yards over expected per carry, much closer to Clyde Edwards-Helaire. The other interesting thing about this graph is the y-axis is yards over expected per carry. The x-axis is run blocking grade as determined by the folks at Pro Football Focus, who, as we know, are infallible and never wrong. The top ranked run blocking team. I'm going to go until I get to the Chiefs.
Okay.
The Browns, the Vikings, the Bears, the Ravens, the Falcons, the Chiefs.
Pretty good.
6th in the league in run block ranking. You know who's dead last? Sunday night's opponent, the Los Angeles Chargers.
That sounds like a good sign for the Chiefs defense that continues to grow, and also for the Chiefs offense as well. I need to get the defensive numbers here. I don't know how the Chargers have been against the run this year. I'll have to look that up, but Chiefs are going to cream them on Sunday night, by the way. I'm in full. This is going to be a blowout mode.
The only thing keeping me from getting there is the Chargers play the Chiefs every year tough, like it's their Super Bowl. The Chargers are so much better against the Chiefs than they play against anybody else on their schedule every single season.
That's fair.
They'll get up for this one. They may not have enough dudes on the field for it to matter. I know they're hopeful to get their two top wide receivers back. We'll see.
Yeah, we'll see. I'll believe that when I see
right.
it. We've heard Keenan Allen's close to returning for like a month now, so we'll see. We'll take a break here on 580 Sports Talk, and on the other side of this timeout, we've got today's What Is Wrong With You, plus Tim Fitzgerald will join us later this hour here on 580 WIBW. Time for What Is Wrong With You here on 580 Sports Talk. Two new stories today going head-to-head against, well, they'll go head-to-head first, and then the winner will match up against Declan Quinn, the middle-aged man from Wisconsin who retrofitted his identity to a stolen passport of a former Irish soldier, changed his name.
We don't know he was actually a former Irish soldier.
That's
he could have
true.
made that part up.
That's true. That could have been
to
made
make
up
himself
as well.
seem, maybe that bolstered his bona fides in the HOA president's election to use his position of power to defraud the HOA.
That's very true. I saw another story about an HOA for today, and I didn't end up picking it. I did, however, pick the story of 52-year-old Felipe Fonseca of Stock Island, Florida, who is charged with burglary, larceny, possession of burglary tools, and damage to property after he was arrested Sunday for stealing a GPS unit and 85 pounds of shrimp. According to investigators, the owner of a storage unit contacted the Monroe County Sheriff's Office in Florida at 10 a.m. after finding the lock to his storage facility had been broken off. A Garmin GPS unit, a trim tilt unit for an outboard engine, an air pump, and 85 pounds of shrimp had been taken. Deputies viewed security footage and identified Fonseca from previous encounters with law enforcement. He was found shortly thereafter and was taken to the Monroe County Jail and booked on $20,000 bond. This gentleman, Mr. Fonseca, has had some issues with the law before. Going back as far as 2003, so the last 2 decades, he's had charges of DUI, aggravated assault with a deadly weapon, theft, battery, and multiple crimes against the elderly.
That's so much shrimp.
That's a lot of shrimp.
I think that's what Pimp C was talking about when he said, I ate so much shrimp, I got iodine poisoning.
I'm trying to think of how much shrimp I could eat at a time. Now, are we talking like the little shrimp, or are we talking big ones?
That's a good question.
Like you'd make, a good shrimp cocktail with.
Like 85 pounds of popcorn shrimp, or like 85 pounds of the jumbos?
Man, I love shrimp.
Me too.
I really do.
They showed last night on the Champions Classic broadcast the famed shrimp cocktail from St. Elmo's in Indianapolis. And Jay Billis started going to town on it, and as a result, could not comment on Kyle Filipowski's dunk.
Completely missed the play.
Like, I understood, because that thing looked delicious. I wanted shrimp so bad. I know it was like 10:30 at night. I wanted a shrimp cocktail right then and there.
Oh, yeah, I'll eat shrimp any time of day.
Love shrimp.
By the way, for reference, I looked it up at the Dillon's website. They have these prepackaged shrimp cocktail trays you can buy.
Sure.
Got 20 shrimp on them. It's 11 ounces. I could eat one of those and be really full, but I've done it before.
So, like, we're talking about like close to 90 of those platters worth of shrimp this guy stole?
Yes.
Was he going to fence them? Like, or was he just going to eat them? Was he just going to Bubba Gump it and cook them all himself?
I'm going to make so many fried shrimp. I could not tell you. What do you have for today?
We're going to Wilkinsburg, Pennsylvania, where there was a carjacking at a park and ride a little before 9 p.m. November 1st. The victim told police 2 people followed her off a bus to her car and demanded her cell phone and keys. Police found the car a couple hours later, said the people who were inside hopped out and ran. As the investigation unfolded, police said a Westinghouse High School security guard identified one of the suspects, 19-year-old Daryl Kamen Jr. of Wilkinsburg, from bus surveillance video. Kamen is a former student at the school. Another clue came from within the stolen car, which showed that a device named Daryl's iPhone was connected to the stolen vehicle. So they stole this car, and then they had to make sure the Bluetooth was working so that they could answer any important phone calls that they might be getting in the process of stealing this crime. And also, hook up their Spotify.
Yeah,
listen, I've done it in rental cars, but you know what else I've done? As soon as I'm out of that rental, I disconnect my phone. I don't need anybody seeing that Delu's iPhone has been connected to their to the rental car at the Avis or wherever.
You got to get a couple days of cushion before you connect it.
It's nice to know I'm not the only one who just named their iPhone blank iPhone. Blank's
iPhone.
iPhone.
Yeah. I think mine's just Brendan's iPhone.
That makes me feel better.
Yeah, you can't do it that quickly, man. You got to give it some time. You really have to. Who wins today?
I think this guy, the guy who tried to connect Bluetooth his phone to a stolen car, and that's how they're going to catch him, in part. That's really funny to me.
I think I'm with you on that. That's really dumb. You got to give it some time.
It's really, really stupid.
What if you get caught, bro? See, that's why I could never be a criminal, because I would always just be thinking, what if this goes wrong?
Right?
And I would just be racked by guilt. I could never do it. Does that beat Declan Quinn?
No. I think we're still waiting for a story better than the middle-aged guy from Wisconsin pretending to be Irish so he could be the HOA president.
I just love the part where nobody even knew who he was. It was like, oh, yeah, I'll vote for him.
Yeah.
It's like no one knew. It's like they were asking to be.
What's his deal? Like, says he's an Irish immigrant who was in the Irish Army. Yeah, that checks out.
Yeah, sure. Sure, he'll keep the neighborhood looking nice. Hope he won't raise our fees. All right. Good stuff.
His stories sound like all the Cranberries songs. I'm sure they're accurate.
That is our winner once again in What Is Wrong With You. Let's take a break. Tim Fitzgerald joins us next here on 580 Sports Talk.
like that would be a bad idea to be all sticky.
You win that dang day.
I'm not a big fan of sticky.
What a great day to be a Wildcat.
It's a big Kansas State victory.
Tim Fitzgerald of GoPowerCat.com joining us here on 580 Sports Talk for our Azura Credit Union Wildcat Wrap-up. You can follow him on Twitter at Life of Fitz. And, of course, go check out Fitz and all of his crew and all the great work they do covering K-State athletics at GoPowerCat.com. What's going on, Fitz? How's it going?
I'm trying to prepare a pregame podcast, prepare for basketball tomorrow night, then get ready to go on the road Friday morning. Guys, it's not easy being me. I want sympathy.
I can offer you sympathy as somebody who
thank you.
Like complains if I get a sniffle and is pretty much out of commission all day. I can appreciate wanting sympathy for the mundane.
Yeah, you know, I know it's my job and I should be happy about it, but no, anyhow, I'm doing great. Doing great, just plugging away here.
Well, good. We love to hear that. Let's start on the gridiron today for K-State. We will get to K-State hoops coming up in just a few minutes and the great start to the year for the Tang Gang. But I do want to start with football. How surprised were you with the overall result in Saturday's win over Baylor? I said on the air, I think I picked Baylor, but I said, hey, look, this could go either way. Baylor's playing really well. K-State's obviously got the ability to beat anyone in this league. I thought it was a true toss-up, and then K-State whooped them. They just beat them down all game long. How surprised were you by that result?
Well, I've got myself painted in a corner because I have now missed K-State 3 straight weeks. And I'm beginning to feel like my picks actually have an impact on the outcome of the game. I thought K-State could win, but I didn't think that game would be a blowout. I did pick Baylor, but it was a blowout. And once K-State got going on offense, K-State's defense just smothered the Bears. It was impressive, and I think K-State with Will Howard is a whole different beast. This offense runs at a really efficient pace. They get a lot of rhythm going. Because of that, the defense kind of gets, sparked up a little bit. It's fun to watch them play, and I look at this West Virginia game, and I think, well, West Virginia's pass defense stinks, so if they can protect Will Howard and give him time to pass, he should have a field day against this Mountaineers team. K-State team's capable of playing at a really high level when Will Howard's quarterback.
Well, let's get right to that then. We now know as of yesterday when Chris Kleiman spoke to you guys in the K-State beat pool that Adrian Martinez not necessarily out for the season, but he is out for this week. Again, that's what Chris Kleiman had to say. So it's Will Howard's show for this week. I do sort of hate to play the what-if game with injuries, and I really do feel bad on a human level for Adrian Martinez. I really do. But if he was able to go this week, do you think it still would have been Will Howard's show?
Absolutely. I really do. I think Chris Kleiman, after the game, kind of recognized that, you can excuse the first half of TCU, he was an unknown, and then TCU shut him down. And then they just steamrolled Oklahoma State, and you're still like, okay. I mean, Oklahoma State just looked totally disinterested that day. Then when he goes out on the field, and you could notably see the change in the team, and how everything just got from good to really good when he was on the field. There's no way they weren't going to go with Adrian because he was going to be dinged up. Even if available, he was going to have two different things going on with his leg. And, when he went down, we assumed it was the knee again, and then it looked like it was an ankle, but it turned out to be his lower leg, and we think he's got a cracked bone in there that, you can play with it. You might be risking more severe injury. So when Chris Kleiman said at the press conference, he might be available before the end of the regular season, I'm like, well, he could, but maybe that's only now they've reversed roles, that Adrian would only come in if Will Howard went down. And but yeah, I feel badly for Adrian. He has just had so many injuries through his career, and that injury is a perfect example. It was just kind of a freak thing. He had his toe in the ground, he's pushing, and a linebacker falls right on that leg, and his toe gets caught up underneath and fractures a bone apparently.
So then with Will Howard in control of the offense, he's taken over there for, I'm with you. I think it's not just for the time being. I think it's his show for the rest of the year. You've got 2 games left against West Virginia, who is just not very good this year and has moved on from their athletic director. It'd be shocking to me if they kept Neil Brown around at this point. Then you've got KU, which K-State is still the better team. Now, KU's more competitive than in most years in recent memory, but K-State's going to be probably a touchdown or more favorite in that game. From this point forward, is it a disappointment if K-State does not make it to Arlington?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's no other way to look at it. They've got a pathway cleared now with the Texas loss. They need to win at West Virginia and defend their home field against Kansas, which is, going to roll in with Jalen Daniels. They might be rolling in after another win over Texas. We'll see how that plays out. But, yeah, they've got a clear pathway now, and they need to just take care of business. I feel like they will, but boy, it would be really hard for this program if they would trip over one of these teams and say Texas wins the next 2, and lo and behold, you're not in Arlington. That'd be really difficult.
Our guest is Tim Fitzgerald from GoPowerCat.com. He joins us every Wednesday at this time for the Isiah Credit Union Wildcat Wrap-up. You can follow along with Fitz on Twitter at Life of Fitz. And, of course, check out the work of him and all of his great colleagues at GoPowerCat.com. Fitz, Kobe Savage out for the year at safety. He had an interception in the first half against Baylor, was playing well with the rest of the defense on Saturday night, really having a nice year, and it's unfortunate to see it come to an end due to injury. Who has to step up on the back end to cover for the loss of Savage moving forward?
Yeah, I think, guys like Sincere Mason need to certainly step up, and they've got enough depth back there. It's amazing to me that this was the position of my biggest concern on the entire team, safety. And they did such an incredible job of going out and finding transfers. And in Kobe Savage's case, it was a junior college transfer that they basically put all new starters out there. And they're capable of still putting some pretty good players out there, but they have less depth now. And they have kind of less spirit and leadership on the back end because Kobe played with a great deal of passion while communicating things to his teammates at all times. So that's really the ongoing concern here is, can they hold up in terms of depth? And do they still have the same level of communication back there that they're really going to need, against any offense that you're playing at this level? Because it's gotten so complex now.
West Virginia, as we mentioned on the schedule, Saturday in Morgantown for the Cats. What do they have to do well, particularly in this matchup, to make sure that they escape their last Big 12 road test with a victory?
Well, they're going to have to probably throw the ball around. They're not going to they just can't let West Virginia feel like they have life. And TCU did. I mean, TCU let West Virginia hang around and compete, be really competitive before winning that game by 10 points. But, I mean, I've seen them do this now to Oklahoma State and Baylor, where they start putting up points and they don't let the other team answer because the defense can play so loose and free in attack mode. If they get that way again, it's going to be a blowout. But West Virginia's been better at home. They might have a coaching change. They might be dissatisfied with the direction of the program, but they've beaten Oklahoma and Baylor in Morgantown, so everything's on the table. They can play better football in Morgantown than what they play anywhere else. It's a little weird, but, this isn't a gimme. There's no way this is a gimme. If you had to tell me K-State's got to go win a road game this week, who do you want to go play? I would say West Virginia. But that's only because everyone else is pretty damn good at home, too.
Shifting focus for a moment from the gridiron to the hardwood, it was a good weekend for Kansas State athletics as K-State men picked up a road win, their first road test of the Jerome Tang era, and they withstood a furious Cal rally on Friday night to earn the victory over the Golden Bears. Now, Cal stinks. That's not a real good team, and we'll be honest about that up front, but I have to think it was very encouraging for that Kansas State team to withstand that rally on the road and find a way to win that game anyway. And the thing, I don't know what stood out the most to you, Fitz, and I'd love to know, but what stood out to me was this is a team that appears to already know 2 games in exactly who the alpha dogs are, and those guys carried them.
Yeah, you're exactly right. And I think this game might have been a little synopsis of what we'll see from this K-State team. Really high highs. They can play at a really high level. And then they just disappeared for a good chunk of that second half and turned a 20-point lead into 1 point, which is, quite an accomplishment, not in a good way. But then Marquise Noel stepped up and other guys stepped up and off they went and they got the win. This is exactly what Jerome Tang wanted to do. He wanted to take them out on the road early in the season, see what they're made of. But he didn't want them to go play the Lakers or something. I mean, he wanted a winnable game and he found it. And the rest of the non-conference schedule, honestly, is really easy. Bruce Weber's staff put this together thinking they were going to be in rebuild mode. So the rest of the games of the non-con belong to that staff. And it's a really friendly schedule, in part because it's scheduled down, but also teams like Butler it's down this year. And so you just run into some teams that maybe have been up in the past when games would have been tougher, but this year they're not so good. This is a really manageable schedule for Kansas State coming home Thursday to play UMKC that lost a game that you can't even explain. They lost to such a bad D2 team. It's just shocking. And then they go to the Cayman Islands, and all of those games are really winnable. So I think K-State could get off to a really good start, but we still won't know a whole lot about them until Big 12 basketball.
We're joined by Tim Fitzgerald here on the show, publisher of GoPowerCat.com. Head over to GoPowerCat. It's part of the 24/7 Sports Network. If you're not a VIP, you're missing out on all sorts of great inside information, awesome recruiting stuff, and more on the Wabash Station board. You can also find Fitz on Twitter at Life of Fitz. And Fitz, to that point, with the non-conference schedule looking the way it does, I mean, the next 4 games, well, UMKC's been bad for quite some time, but Rhode Island has had something of a brand recently. Butler has had obviously something of a brand. Wichita State too, clearly, especially here in this state. But Wichita State's the highest KenPom team of all of them, and they're only at 98. So how important is it not just for K-State to win these games, but to win these games convincingly?
Yeah. Start building up some style points.
Yeah.
I think that will come into play. I really do. And I think they're still trying to settle into who they are on a consistent basis offensively. And I know Jerome Tang wants to get a more steady performance. He's seeing a drop-off in every second half. If you go back to exhibitions, and he's not liking that too much. You can't do that. But it's a great opportunity for this program, these players, to learn how to play 40 minutes together, and I think they'll get there.
I don't know if I asked you this before the season started, so I'll ask you now. Do you think K-State makes the tournament this year?
I would have told you no. I'm a little curious now that they might. This is a better team than K-State's had the last 3 years. This is a better team than the team last year, although they had some nice pieces last year with Pack and Smith. But I think they're better overall. They're more explosive. They have a higher ceiling. And I feel like K-State's team last year was kind of on the cusp of it until they kind of faded at the end. They could have gotten into the conversation. So, yeah, if this is the worst team in the Big 12, the Big 12 is a bear. I mean, I don't know who's going to finish below them, but if K-State gets up into that 6th or 7th slot, and keep in mind the non-conference weakness will hurt them in terms of selection, but also I think the story of Jerome Tang and taking over will help them with the selection. Yeah, I think they can be a bubble team. I think they can get into the field, and if they really click and play closer to their ceiling, they'll be solidly in the field.
And I honestly don't think this is going to be the worst team in the Big 12 either. I mean, I think K-State is clearly better just even on paper than West Virginia is. And, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised either, Fitz, if they had a better year than, a couple of those other teams that are near the bottom of the league, the Oklahoma States. Hell, Oklahoma lost to Sam Houston at home in a game they should not have lost. So I think it's absolutely possible K-State is flirting around 6th or 7th at the very least.
And TCU came out and lost.
Oh, my God, yeah.
I mean, that's going to happen early in the season, but I think it offers a window of hope to Kansas State fans and the team that hey, maybe they're not behind anyone in this conference, that they can compete at a high level. I'll just say that so many games in the past, recent history of Kansas State, when you started looking at the athleticism of the opponent matched up to K-State, K-State was such in a talent deficit from the start that Coach Weber had to really kind of work some magic with, he was a very sound coach and get the team to play, and then have a guy like Nigel Pack maybe take over. This year's team can jump with them, can run with them, can rebound with them, they can defend with them. Now can they score at a consistent basis, running some form of offense that doesn't just rely on, hey, we got Keontae Johnson, give him the ball and watch him go. Yeah, if they can find that consistent offense, this will be a good team.
Last thing I've got for you, Fitz, did you get to catch any of Bruce Weber's TV analyst debut this past week?
No, I didn't. Did you?
So I actually did, and the reason why is I thought, oh my God, they actually gave him an Illinois game, and his partner on the Big Ten Network was actually someone I went to high school with, Connor Onion. He played in front. I tweeted this out that I was watching on TV the head coach of my favorite team from when I was in 7th grade, Illinois, and also the guy who started in front of me on our 7th grade basketball team. So I actually did tune in. I thought he did okay.
Did Connor have big onions, as a certain basketball analyst would say?
I think you could say that. I always said, I put that on Twitter and I said, this was a joke. Connor actually had talent. I just happened to be tall. That's why he actually played. But yeah, he had some skill. He had a bit of a bag for 7th grade.
So Onion is his real last name?
Oh, yeah. Great guy.
It makes me want to cry.
Tim Fitzgerald is the publisher of GoPowerCat.com. Check out GoPowerCat, all the best coverage of everything K-State athletics. You can find him on Twitter as well, at Life of Fitz. As always, Fitz, we appreciate the time. Enjoy the busy Wildcat weekend coming up.
You bet, Mr. Tomato.
That is Tim Fitzgerald from GoPowerCat.com. Now, for real, his name is Connor Onion. He's a good dude. A nice guy.
Quite a last name.
It is. They did a whole segment on the Levitard show a few weeks ago about it. Like, they came across that he was doing a game, and they did a whole segment about it. He played along to. He's been Onion his whole life.
Yeah, you get used to it by now. You've heard all the jokes.
He was actually on the call of the Toledo game last night.
Oh, okay.
It went kind of viral because he had an awesome call of the game-winning touchdown. If you haven't checked it out, I would recommend it. We've got to take a break. Our 580 Sports Talk headlines are coming up next. go. Final hour of 580 Sports Talk on this Wednesday. Coming your way, Brendan Dworzinski, Dan Lucero here with you. If you missed any of our show up until this point, do not worry, because you can head to our website, 580wibw.com, and you can check out the podcast version of the show. It's very easy to find. 580wibw.com. There's a podcasts tab right in the center of the page. Just hover your mouse over that. Another menu will pop up. Click on 580 Sports Talk. Boom. There is the hour-by-hour podcast breakdown of the show. Thanks, as always, to Tim Fitzgerald for joining us last hour for our Azura Credit Union Wildcat Wrap-up, talking all things Kansas State. Of course, you can go check that out if you missed it over at 580wibw.com. Additionally, if you would like to chime in with your thoughts on anything we are talking about on today's show, you can very easily do so on the Big O Tires text line, 785-272-9429. That is the text line number. Or you can comment on YouTube. Sports on 580 WIBW is our YouTube channel. Go subscribe. We're getting close to 100. That's a cool number. There's nothing specifically noteworthy about it. It's just a nice round number, and humans like those. And it would make me feel good because we've put a lot of effort into this. So, Sports on 580 WIBW, that's the YouTube channel. If you don't know how to find it, youtube.com, just search Sports on 580 WIBW, will pop up. You can also just Google it, Sports on 580 YouTube, then it'll come up. Or youtube.com/@Sports on 580. 3 different ways that you can find us on YouTube. And we can see all of your comments. So if you want to share something and you're watching the live stream, just let us know. We'll see you right away. Coming up here in this 5 o'clock hour of 580 Sports Talk, we've got our headlines in just a moment. We will also get to a look ahead to the college basketball season. We didn't do one going into last week, but now we've got a couple of games under our belt. We're ready to look ahead. We'll get some of the teams we are high on, maybe not so high on versus the consensus, other storylines we're paying attention to for the college basketball season. That's coming up later on this hour. But without further ado, let's get to today's 580 Sports Talk headlines, brought to you by Blue Dot of Kansas. Go visit them online at bluedotkansas.com. And my first headline for today is piggybacking on the first headline we had yesterday about the absolutely horrific shooting that took place in Virginia, Charlottesville, Virginia, that led to the death of 3 University of Virginia football players. A couple pieces of information about this. You heard some more about the ongoing trial regarding the key suspect in the shooting. You heard about that on the top of the hour newscast from CBS Sports. On the football side of things, we do know that the University of Virginia has canceled its game against Coastal Carolina that was scheduled for Saturday. No decision has been made yet whether or not they are going to play their game against Virginia Tech coming up on November 26th. Obviously, that is a big rivalry game for both of those programs. It's a big deal. I would not be shocked if they did decide not to play it, as this program at Virginia goes through just an unspeakable, horrible tragedy. Additionally, Juan Thornhill of the Chiefs graduated from the University of Virginia, played his college football there. He is going to wear specialty painted UVA cleats for Sunday's game against the Chargers with the uniforms of the 3 slain Virginia players on his cleats. That's a very nice touch from Juan Thornhill. And again, Virginia will not be playing this Saturday against Coastal Carolina. Thoughts to everybody who's been affected by this still. Just an unspeakable tragedy. And hopefully they are able to find some sort of peace and solace through all of this. And the football side of this is pretty much the least important part of it all.
That is certainly the truth. And you pray for the healing of those who were injured and for everybody affected by this in any way. First headline for me today, we're going to go to the National Football League and give you the Chiefs injury report. Practice participation reports start on Wednesday for a Sunday game. The Chiefs, of course, visiting the Los Angeles Chargers on Sunday Night Football this coming Sunday. And the wide receiver position is a bit of a concern heading into this week for the Kansas City Chiefs, as 3 wide receivers did not practice yesterday, or today, rather. Mecole Hardman continuing to deal with the abdomen injury and also apparently under the weather, listed as a did not practice with the abdomen and the illness. Also, Marquez Valdez-Scantling didn't practice today due to illness. There is some kind of sickness going around the National Football League right now, just as an aside. Like, there are a bunch of Bills players who are sick right now. Also, there were a lot of Broncos players reportedly who were impacted by illness going into their game last week against the Titans. Who can say what that illness might be?
Yeah. Who's to say?
Yeah, who's to say? But Marquez Valdez-Scantling ill, did not practice today. Juju Smith-Schuster, still in the concussion protocol, did not practice today. Neither did Chris Lamons, the cornerback, who is also in concussion protocol after suffering a concussion on Sunday. So those are the 4 DNPs for the Chiefs, 3 of them at wide receiver. 2 players limited. Jerick McKinnon, dealing with a hamstring and a shoulder ailment, was a limited practice participant. L'Jarius Sneed, also limited with a knee injury. Isiah Pacheco is on here with a quad injury, but he was a full participant, as was Andrew Wiley. That's a bit of good news. Wiley hurt his elbow on Sunday, didn't play for, I think, almost the entire second half. He was dealing with that elbow injury. Prince Tega Wanogo filled in at right tackle in Wiley's absence. I think the best thing you can say about Tega Wanogo's performance was that nobody noticed he was out there, which is a good thing. Many did fine. Didn't blow any blocks, didn't commit any penalties. He held the fort, but it looks like Andrew Wiley's going to be good to go for Sunday. He is a full participant with the elbow. We do not yet have the Chargers injury report, but
damn West Coast teams.
Yeah, we may not get that until the show is over. We'll keep an eye out for that and pass it along if we do get it. But we do know that both Mike Williams and Keenan Allen were at practice going through some individual drills today. And when Keenan Allen was asked if he would return to play on Sunday, his response was hopefully.
Yeah, I've been saying that for a month.
Right.
So I don't know if I can trust that at this point. We'll see. I guess we'll see. We have a texter from the 913 who says that that mystery illness is suckitis.
All right. Seems a little cruel.
A little bit harsh. Yeah.
But not inaccurate if we're talking about the Broncos here.
That's true.
Like, that is an illness that has plagued that particular team all season.
That is going to be tough with the wide receiver room. And, you know, we talked earlier about Kadarius Toney with Jordan Foote, and, you know, what can we expect from him is, you know, 4 for 57 and a touchdown. Is that about as good as it'll get with him? Is that, you know, 4 for 57 about what we can expect game to game? He said that's probably for this year offensively about the peak. Well, they might need more from him if they can't get Juju out of the concussion protocol and if MVS can't go.
And we'll see.
And Hardman.
Hardman, I think, is the more immediate concern because he did not play last week.
Yeah.
Certainly, I think Toney kind of filled the Hardman role in the offense. But right now, if I'm Justin Watson, I'm doing a little extra playbook study on the route tree and making sure I'm ready to go because he could certainly be a factor in the passing game on Sunday.
Over under 4.5 receptions for Jerick McKinnon.
Well, gosh, he's on the injury list too. I mean,
That's
but
true.
Yeah, like he could be a factor he could be much more of a factor in the receiving game if the Chiefs are short on wide receiver. I mean, right now, like if they had to play today, it would have been, who? It would have been Watson and Toney and Marcus Kemp.
Oh my. Yeah, you probably bring him. Oh,
Sky Moore. Can't forget him.
Oh yeah, the second round pick.
Yeah.
Oh, they let Kemp go, did they not?
Yeah, I think you're right.
Because he asked.
They let Fountain go for sure.
Yeah.
I thought Kemp had maybe been back on the practice squad.
He is back on the practice squad. Maybe I'm thinking of Fountain. Oh, they have 2 other wide receivers on the practice squad. Can you name either one of them? One, you might be able to.
Corey Coleman still there?
Corey Coleman is not still there.
Thought I had it.
No, Corey Coleman is gone. He is he on a list? No, he's just gone. No, the other wide receivers they have, Cornell Powell.
Sure.
And did you remember that the Chiefs assigned Emir Smith-Marset?
No.
Me either. I also don't really remember that. But he is on the practice squad.
That one glided. I don't think that signing was a Blue Dot of Kansas headline when the Chiefs made it.
No, I do not believe it was either.
So anyway, that's your Chiefs injury report. No practice today for Hardman, Smith-Schuster, Valdez-Scantling, or Lamons. McKinnon and Sneed limited. Pacheco and Wiley full participants.
Let's get to a couple rapid-fire NFL headlines outside of the Chiefs and Chargers matchup here in our 580 Sports Talk headlines, brought to you, as always, by Blue Dot of Kansas. Quarterback news today. A couple of quarterbacks are going to keep their jobs for the time being. Taylor Heineke going to start again for Washington coming up this week because Carson Wentz is not physically ready to go as of yet. Here's how this conversation should go. Is our other option still Carson Wentz? Yes. Okay, Taylor Heineke is going to start. Like, there's no reason that team should go back to Wentz. I know you hated the move on Monday Night Football, the celebrating.
It was
the kind
just
of
lame.
Yeah, I get it. I do. I don't think there's any reason for them to go back to Carson Wentz at this point. They are better with Taylor Heineke.
Yes, I think people like Taylor Heineke more than they like Carson Wentz. There was a great column, great article at defector.com today, David Roth, writing about the backup quarterback just in general, that there's an old film trope about the guy who exists to lose his love interest to the protagonist at the end of the movie. That's Carson Wentz. He is what they call in the film industry a Baxter. He is the person who is going to lose his girl to the film's protagonist by the end of the movie.
That's fair. Yeah, no, that's essentially exactly what he is. And look, people don't really like him. He hasn't really been good. There's really no reason to continue to go back to Carson Wentz.
He is much more physically talented than Taylor Heineke.
Oh, for sure.
But not as good at playing quarterback as Taylor Heineke is.
Which,
no, I think I'd stay with him too if I were the Commanders.
No, I absolutely would at that point. Other NFL quarterback news, the Saints are going to stick with Andy Dalton after losing to the Steelers by 10 points this weekend. They're not going back to Jameis. What did Jameis do to Dennis Allen or to Pete Carmichael, their offensive coordinator? Like, is Andy Dalton at this stage of his career, 12 years in or whatever it is, 11 years in, is he really your best option, or are you just trying to tank? Because that's what it sort of feels like at that point. Why not try Jameis? I don't get that one. Additionally, some other news. Today, as practice for the week, the injury report practices begin. I don't know if you knew this. He can't play this week, but Deshaun Watson is able to start practicing this week for the Cleveland Browns, and he did indeed start today. Brissett is going to play against the Bills this weekend for the Browns. Again, Watson is not eligible to return until next week. He's going to play next week, and they're going to take on the Houston Texans because, of course, they are, because, life is poetic even when it's gross. I hope that the Bills pound them and the Browns are pretty much out of it by the time Watson can finally come back. How close are the Browns to actually even being close to contending? They're 3 for a playoff spot. They're 3-6. They're pretty much out of it. How many teams are ahead of them? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yeah, there's at least 8 teams ahead of them right now. So 9. And they're tied with a couple other teams. So they're not going to make the playoffs, thankfully.
Also, their defense stinks. They can't stop anybody. Deshaun Watson's not fixing that.
No, they're big buns. Man, it's gross that he's coming back. I just hate that so much.
It is.
I really do.
Very unpleasant.
Also from the NFL today, the Philadelphia Eagles made a couple of moves. Tight end Dallas Goedert has to go on IR because of his shoulder injury suffered Monday night. That's tough for them. He's been really good this year. But they also did add a veteran to try to shore up their not very good run defense. Linval Joseph, a longtime NFL veteran for the Vikings and Chargers last season, has signed with the Eagles. That's a good ad for them. That's a really good move for them.
From the 785 on the Big O Tires text line, the Browns are pathetic on so many levels.
Correct. Good take.
Free my guy, Nick Chubb. He's so much fun. I wish you were on a better team because I think he's the best running back in the NFL. I think if there were a dispersal draft of running backs, he'd be the guy I'd want number 1.
Ooh, good. That's a good one.
That might be a longer segment someday, but I think he'd be my number 1 pick. Him or Saquon. If I get him healthy.
If you get him healthy, yeah. Put a pin in that one for May when things are a little slow.
Right. When the Royals are 10 games out in the Central already, and we got to come up with some topics.
Or mid-April when we've exhausted most of the real draft talk. Like, what if we drafted current players? Yeah, we'll save that one for then.
Next headline for me in the blue dot of Kansas headlines. You ever get into the funny money, Brendan? The crypto? The funny money?
I briefly did. I jumped in and I didn't cash out when I should have. I put a couple $100 in. It had gone up and I would have made a couple $100 profit. And I thought, man, I've been reading. It sounds like they think it's going to steadily rise slowly for a little bit. Then it crashed. I pulled out. I ended up with nothing. Not nothing, but I ended up breaking even, dipped out right at the right time before it really fell off the cliff. And I said, never again. I will never do this again in my life.
Well, the funny money's been in the news because the funny money it's got some problems because it's a Ponzi scheme and a scam, and you never should have invested in it at all, probably. Particularly when it comes to cryptocurrency exchange FTX, the third largest cryptocurrency exchange. They ended up with billions of dollars worth of losses, had to seek bankruptcy protection. The Bahamas-based company and their founder, Sam Bankman-Fried, are under investigation by state and federal authorities for allegedly investing depositors' funds in ventures without their approval. Well, now they're being sued, and so are a bunch of sports and Hollywood celebrities. They've all been named in defendants in a class action lawsuit against FTX, arguing that their celebrity status made them culpable for promoting the firm's failed business model. Among those included in the lawsuit, Tom Brady, his ex-wife, Gisele Bündchen, Steph Curry, Shaquille O'Neal, Miami Heat center Udonis Haslem, David Ortiz.
Udonis Haslem was doing crypto deals? Why?
Well, the Heat, he is the longest tenured Miami Heat,
true.
and they did, until about a week ago, play at FTX Arena. You may also remember FTX, by the way, as the patch that Major League Baseball umpires have been wearing the last 2 seasons. There is one former baseball player, David Ortiz, one active baseball player, Shohei Ohtani of the Los Angeles Angels, Trevor Lawrence, the Jacksonville Jaguars, tennis star Naomi Osaka. Also, the beloved comedian Larry David is included in this lawsuit as well. He famously did a Super Bowl commercial for FTX,
which was very funny and in a way was almost like prescient about it, because his whole ad was, no, this is never going to work. And then they went through history and various iterations of Larry David, said, oh, sliced bread? No, that'll never be a thing. Cars? Absolutely not.
Right.
Well, it ended up being true this time.
Like,
here's the thing, because I saw at the time when they had, because the Super Bowl was insanely full of ads.
Yeah,
for
so like
crypto this year.
LeBron did an ad for crypto.com.
That was weird.
Yeah, super weird. He was talking to his like childhood self. It was really weird. Matt Damon did one. I think that was also for crypto.com. They're hanging on. FTX is absolutely not hanging on, and people want their money. And Sam Bankman-Fried is basically like, hey, I ain't got it.
Yeah, because they spent all the money they got from people investing in it to go, make their other investments. Well, they lost all their crypto investments. Then people said, hey, we want our money back. Oh, well, we lost your money. Sorry, tough beans. But I remember reading at the time a lot of people who said, hey, this is a scam. This is not going to work. And it's irresponsible of LeBron or of, any of these other athletes or actors who were saying, hey, get involved with this. And I thought, I bet you LeBron filmed this commercial and like an hour later said, what's cryptocurrency when someone brought it up? Like, I think, and not to say that they're not culpable for it, but I think a lot of celebrities and athletes, they're like, oh yeah, no, money? Sure. Yeah, whatever. Yeah, I'll do it. Whatever. Doesn't matter to me.
Yeah, it's a check. It's an endorsement. It's no different than doing like a commercial for New Balance or like Wheaties.
What did Dave Chappelle say the one time? I've done ads for Coke and Pepsi, and guess what? It tastes the same. Like,
so
as long as the check clears. Although now I guess the check's not clearing.
No, the checks are not clearing. The lawsuit has been filed in the Southern District of Florida. Also that like Tom Brady knows there's trouble afoot. Like he was going through, he had to make some changes to his Twitter account, like take some pictures down, change his profile picture. I don't know if you heard, he's not married anymore.
Yeah.
So he had to do something about that. But he also was deleting a lot of his old tweets that were about cryptocurrency. I think Tom Brady was a true believer. I think he was into the crypto. I think Steph Curry probably listened to some people and got into the crypto. I don't know how heavy Trevor Lawrence or Shohei Ohtani are into the funny money or whatever it is, or like Larry David absolutely doesn't know what it is.
Oh, absolutely.
Absolutely no idea. But yes, FTX, it's been a very bad time for them. Their name is no longer on the arena in Miami, is also no longer a part of the sponsorship deal at the University of California.
Yep.
They were playing at FTX Stadium. They've actually burned that logo off the field as of today. It's all going terribly, terribly wrong. And who could have seen it coming for something that is free of government regulation?
Charles Barkley, famous for many things, but among them, athletes are not role models. This is why you got to, I'm not trying to tell someone how to parent, but if your kids are like, oh my God, Tom Brady loves crypto. I'm going to get into crypto. Like, hey, maybe you should look up to accountants or, I don't know, not that.
It turns out some government regulation actually good, particularly when it comes to your money.
Particularly when it comes to guys in the Bahamas that are taking your money and are going to go run around with it and have fun while you end up losing.
Yeah, and it never added up to me. So I give you real money and you give me this funny money that I can't use to like do anything. Oh, so okay, it's like the stock market. Is there regulation of this stock market? There's not. So I could just lose all my money
and it's just gone.
It's just gone. So now I got to sue Trevor Lawrence to get it back.
You know who I bet got really into crypto? Mark Davis. Like, if I had to guess one person involved in sports who was like, wait, this is my get out of jail free card, Mark Davis.
Maybe that's why. And here's a Blue Dot of Kansas headline inside of Blue Dot of Kansas headline. There is reporting today. I forget who had this. Was it Schefter? Was it Rappaport? It was one of the NFL guys who had reporting that kind of from maybe the Dan Patrick show or...
No, I saw this report. I know what you're going with.
So the report is that the reason Josh McDaniels is still, as of this afternoon, the coach of the Las Vegas Raiders, and why Mark Davis has given him a public vote of confidence to return for next year is because they can't afford to fire him. They are cash poor, I believe is the term used to describe the Las Vegas Raiders.
That's always been their thing, hasn't it? Like, haven't they always, like, all of the Davis family money is in the Raiders. Like, they don't have, they don't have Jerry Jones oil money. They don't have the Hunt family oil money and other investments and stuff. Like, they just have the Raiders.
Trying to figure out where that report came from. That is actually, Bill Plaschke of the Los Angeles Times.
Okay.
He said it on Around the Horn.
Oh, all right.
Yes.
Interesting.
So Bill Plaschke. The Raiders don't have the money to fire him, pay him off. They're cash poor.
Unbelievable.
It could be because Mark Davis got soaked in the crypto market too.
Mark Davis, big Dogecoin guy. I can see it.
He got a lot of Shiba Inu coin.
Oh, yeah. Big time. By the way, we've got a text from the 785 that says, my kids listen to 580 every day. Please make good choices. Look, I'm not saying I'm a role model. I also I like to put a shekel or two on a game. I got it right that time.
You did get it right that time. Thank God.
On a sporting event. Other than that, though, I'm not out here committing crimes, okay?
Right.
I said that during What Is Wrong With You. I'd be racked with guilt. I could never do it.
Yes, the vices that Brendan and I engage in are very mild in comparison to a lot of things that you could be involved in. But we promise, we pledge you this. We will not tell you to sink your money into a deregulated currency that doesn't actually exist.
No, the only thing we've been hawking is please do a free YouTube subscription to our channel.
Yes,
so we
free.
can increase our numbers. Yes, it costs nothing but a click. That's all. We've got to get to a timeout. Those were our Blue Dot of Kansas 580 Sports Talk headlines, as always, brought to you by Blue Dot. Let's take a timeout. When we come back, a look ahead to the rest of the college basketball season. What are we looking forward to, and what are we maybe not so high on compared to the rest of the college basketball world? That's next on 580 Sports Talk. on 580 Sports Talk. Brendan and Dan here with you, 5:32 on this Wednesday afternoon. Thank you so much for stopping by today. The college basketball world kind of had its big season opening tip-off event last night with the Champions Classic. KU beats Duke. Michigan State beats Kentucky. By the way, we didn't touch on that game very much. Before we get to the rest of the college basketball landscape, what the hell was Kentucky doing? They, end of regulation and at the end of the first overtime, could have easily put the game away. A couple of free throws, a single good defensive possession at either of those two junctures. Instead, they just whizzed on their leg.
They gave up not just game-tying baskets, not just game-tying layups. They gave up screaming wide open game-tying dunks at the end of both regulation and the first overtime. That's appalling.
I don't know which one was worse. The first one, it was an under the basket inbound. How do you not just clog the lane? Especially when you have Oscar Tshiebwe.
Right. Just park him under the basket. Dare them to score over him at that point.
But the second one looked like one of those college runs where one team is just completely overpowering the other and is just a running back running down the field, like putting corners on skates the whole way. And then Michigan State somehow ended up with a wide open dunk. At that point, you've got to have the basketball IQ to just say, screw it, I'm just going to stand under the hoop. I'm going to go for the charge.
Right.
Why not? Maybe he blows the layup. That does happen in college sometimes.
It does.
So that's a good win for Michigan State.
Yes, it is. I still don't know how good I think they're going to be, but that Sissoko dude looks like a player.
Yeah. I'm so sick of the Hausers.
Yeah.
Get a job.
How are there so many of them?
They're so old. That's the thing. I made a comment about that last night, whichever Hauser it is that plays for Michigan State. I said, God, the freaking Hausers are still around. She goes, who is that? I was like, oh, this guy and his brother, they've been playing for 10 years. There's not really a reason to dislike them. It's just they've been around for too long. Like how people make fun of Perry Ellis or hate Aaron Kraft. Well, there were other reasons to hate Aaron Kraft, but still.
So many reasons.
So many reasons why. All right, let's get into some college basketball preview for this year, though, because we never really did it. We talked a lot about KU and K-State, obviously, and a little about the Big 12 when the preseason poll came out. I'm curious, before we get to teams specifically, is there any one storyline you're kind of following this year, whether it's about a team or a conference, a rule change, anything like that? Anything that you're kind of interested in following along with for the balance of the season?
Just that college basketball is the land of the big men. And there are a lot of elite superstar bigs across the country this year. We saw, Oscar Tshiebwe is awesome.
Yeah.
He doesn't have a full 94 feet game, unfortunately. And so enjoy Oscar while he's in college and can do bully ball things like you used to see in the 80s and 90s in the NBA, because he's going to go be a legend somewhere, but it ain't going to be in America in professional basketball. He can be a legend somewhere, but not in the association.
I could see a 10-day contract or two, and then off to, I don't know, he's going to go give Mitch Lightfoot buckets in German second-tier basketball.
Something like that. But in college, he's a superstar. And in college, Drew Timme is a superstar.
Yep.
And it's fun to watch that. I like that college basketball doesn't aesthetically look exactly like the NBA.
I agree.
I like that the college product. I like this about football, too. It's my favorite thing about college football is it's different, observably, in a lot of ways than NFL football. And college basketball, I think, is trending because you're going to see veteran players who are not in the NBA because maybe they are a little undersized, or maybe they don't have that full court game as a big man, but can still hammer you down low. Those guys are going to be the stars of college basketball. So I'm interested to watch college basketball as it evolves into what it will look like this year, I think, which is a post-dominated game. It will look different than the NBA, and I'm okay with that.
I think, too, and we talked about this before, but the fact that you've got stuff like NIL now where you're getting older players who don't really have much of an NBA future or maybe a fringe NBA guy to stick around longer, that's huge. Timme is the best example of that, I think. I think Tshiebwe is a great example of that as well, that you're getting some guys who are saying, you know what? I'll have a pro career, but I'd like to stay. I'd like to be the biggest name in Spokane, Washington for another year. I'd like to be the king of Lexington. Hell, Jalen Wilson, 5 years ago, Jalen Wilson probably leaves for the NBA this year. But I mean, we know he's got some NIL deals going. I mean, he's made some donations with his money. We know he's gotten an influx of that. He spoke at the NIL college athlete panel over the summer. Like that's better for the sport to have those guys around. So I know you can talk about the big name recruits, and it's especially kind of muddy and murky in football, but that's good for college basketball to have big names who stick around for multiple years, maybe all the way through their eligibility. I think that is a great thing for the sport. That's not really a storyline to follow for this year. I mean, that's going to be a long-term thing, but you know, I think following the big men is going to be a big deal. I think following teams that were kind of on the rise last year, and do they continue to keep up with that? North Carolina's one, and I have a feeling we're going to get to more North Carolina in just a second. They were an 8 seed and made it to the national championship game, had a great chance to win the national championship. Houston went to the Final Four a couple years ago, but they're a team that's kind of on the precipice. TCU, well, we've already seen TCU this year, but that was a team that nearly knocked off Arizona in the second round last year. A lot of people really high on them. They're top 15 to start the year. Well, they've struggled to start this season. So some of those teams that were kind of on the come up last year, how are they going to continue into this season? Also, I'm not going to lie, and this is just me being a homer. I understand that. I think I'm already higher on KU now than I was going into the year. I think I am.
That's what a win at the Champions Classic will do.
Yep.
I mean, that's the first big game of the season. So if you come out with a big win, yeah, should feel pretty good.
We've got a text from the 785 that says college basketball is basketball. The NBA is a different game. I think I, at one point in time, was definitely like, the NBA it's fake basketball. They don't play defense. They don't call traveling. Then I was like, wait a minute. Why do I want them to call more traveling? Like, why would I actually want that? I will say, though, to the point you made, and I think at least partially to our texter's point as well, the NBA is so much about shot making. Like that is the game at this point. And there could be good defense, but you watch like Luka Doncic or Kevin Durant, especially a few years ago. Even Giannis now can shoot the ball stepping out. Like the shot making is unbelievable. There's something more about the X's and O's and the way it just looks different in college. It's a lot less ISO ball, which is, you know, some good, some bad to that. But there is just something different about the way the game is played that I do enjoy. And it is the same principle as college football. You're not going to see teams in the NFL run the triple.
The reason people don't think anybody plays defense in the NBA is because it's all of the unguardable guys from college.
Yeah.
Like in college, each team maybe has one guy who's not guardable. In the NBA, it's 4 guys who are not guardable that play, and that's why doesn't look like there's defense because nobody can guard them. I do think that the NBA product, I don't want to get too far down this road here, but and distract from the topic, but I think the NBA product has been so the analytical revolution has changed how the game is played in the sense that it's just threes. There's a lot of 3-pointers taken, and on a night-by-night basis, a lot of games turn into just a 3-point contest. And those aren't exactly pleasurable to watch. But like, if you can't enjoy like when the best players like get going or the best teams get going in the NBA, then I don't know. Like, I don't know what to tell you. Maybe you don't like basketball that much if you can't enjoy like what Ja Morant does on a night in, night out basis, or what like what the Warriors look like when they're at their championship best. Like that's pretty great basketball because they're the best basketball players in the world. But the stylistic point, I think, still stands, that there is a little bit more X's and O's. There still is a little bit more of a clash of styles you get in college basketball that makes it interesting in its own way on a night in, night out basis. I think you can like them both. I think it's like beer and tacos. You can like them both.
Also, the thing about just consumption of the two, like I'm a Bulls fan more than I'm a fan of like individual players or like a Zach LaVine fan or something. College fans, and we know this in our area because we don't have an NBA team, but KU and K-State obviously wildly popular. You watch because it's KU. You watch because it's K-State. Like you're not saying, "Oh man, Nigel Pack left. I'm a Miami fan now." Like that's not really how college basketball works. So there's just a different kind of consumption too that I think plays into it
for sure.
As for the teams we're following, the big high-profile teams for this year, let's start with the good. Let's start with the optimistic side of it. Who are a couple teams that you're really high on this year, Big 12 or otherwise?
Well, I think that the Big 12 is going to be a blast at the top with KU, Baylor, and I do think Texas is going to be fun to watch with some of the talented scoring guards that they have. I think they're going to be fascinating to watch this year in that way. I also think it's really cool that when you look at like the top 10, top 15 in the country, you look around the country. Who are your prohibitive favorites? Who's the number 1 team in the country? North Carolina. Who's in the top 10? Duke. Kansas, UCLA. Who's the favorite in the Big Ten? Indiana. Like, the Blue Bloods are good. And I think that makes college basketball more exciting when the Blue Blood programs all look like they could be contenders and make deep March runs. Like, you like those brand names as college programs, and you have ties to them. You watch a good Indiana team, and it reminds you of like Calbert Chaney in '93, or you watch a good UCLA team and you think about the O'Bannons and Toby Bailey and Tyus Edney back in '95, or the teams they had in the mid 2000s and went to the Final Four. So I like the Blue Bloods being all good. It would appear is super interesting to me, and I'm interested to. Particularly like a program like Indiana, who really hasn't had this level of preseason hype in a long time. I think you have to go back You have to go back to like the Kelvin Sampson years, which were very brief. But you have to go back to then, I think, to find the last time that an Indiana team was thought of this highly before the season began. So fascinating to see how they handle it. And Trace Jackson Davis is a really good player.
Yeah, and the three I'll give you, and again, I think KU is going to be pretty good. I have even changed my tune on that a little bit in the last few weeks, or in the last week or so. But I put three futures bets down for the Final Four this year. One on Houston, because I really do think they're the real deal. That team with its veteran presence, Marcus Sasser is probably one of the leading candidates, if not the leading candidate for National Player of the Year. Kelvin Sampson, for all the things you can say about him, he's a hell of a coach, and he has coached that team perfectly, honestly, the last couple of years. I think Houston's really good. I put one down on Baylor because I think Baylor's going to be really good. I know the advanced numbers don't love them quite as much as they have in recent years. Ken Palm, Stats Perform, their numbers like them a lot, just not quite like this is an all-time great team. The other one is North Carolina, and I did that because I don't love the ACC this year, and I think North Carolina benefits from year 2 of a system under Hubert Davis. They've got everybody back. Everyone is back. Almost everyone anyway, except Brady Manick from that team last year, and a couple kids who transferred who never played. They had like a 6-man rotation. But that brings us into who are you not so hot on for the year? And I know North Carolina is at least one of those for you.
Yeah, I think we've already talked about this at one point. But yeah, I'm not buying North Carolina as the number 1 team in the country. Like, they feel to me a lot like UCLA did coming into last year, where, yeah, they were good. Yeah, they had a great tournament run. But that UCLA team last year was coming off a season where they barely got in the tournament. They were an 11 seed. Last year, North Carolina was an 8 seed. They lost to Pitt by 20.
Yeah,
they lose at the buzzer. They got rolled by Pitt. And yeah, they got hot in March. They got the big win over Duke, gave them some confidence. They gained experience as the season went on. I expect North Carolina to be good. I expect them to be around on the second weekend of the NCAA tournament. Do I think they're the number 1 team in the country? No, I don't. So I think they're probably a little overhyped, though. Again, I do expect them to be at least a Sweet 16 caliber team. Also asked some questions about Creighton. They were not awesome offensively last year and really haven't been to start this year. St. Thomas gave them everything they could handle in an early game. They're athletic, and I think they're going to be a tough out night in, night out in the Big East. Do I think they're a top 10 team in the country? I have questions.
Their coach, Greg McDermott, his Twitter got hacked. The Creighton men's basketball Twitter account just had to say, please do not fall for the PS5 scam from Greg McDermott.
Greg McDermott is not selling a PS5.
Which is very funny. So bad start, bad look. I'll give you one that I haven't heard talked about a whole lot. Right now in the AP poll, Arizona is 14th. I'm not feeling it with Arizona. I'm going to be honest with you.
So Kerr Kriisa's back at point guard.
Yeah.
Explain it to me, because like the national media loves this guy. Like Seth Davis can't stop talking about how much he loves Kerr Kriisa, and I don't see it.
No, I don't either.
Don't think he's a very good player.
I think they're going to miss Benedict Mathurin a lot.
Yeah, they had all the freaks last year. They don't have quite as many freaks this year.
They also added Courtney Ramey, who I have said for years is not really all that good. So I'm a little bit out on Arizona. I think they'll be good. Pac-12 is going to suck this year. It is going to be so bad. So they're probably going to win that league. I don't think they're all that great.
Yeah, it's them or UCLA in that league. We're going to get through this segment without mentioning the odds-on favorite at FanDuel right now to win the national championship, the Houston Cougars.
I mentioned Houston.
Oh, you did mention Houston.
Yeah,
That's right. Yeah.
I think they're going to be really good.
Yeah. Well, so does FanDuel, because they are right now plus 750, the odds-on favorite to win the national championship. And now's the perfect time to download FanDuel, America's #1 sports book, because right now new customers get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's free bets back if your first bet doesn't win. Just sign up with my promo code Lucero. You can play futures. You can play money line, point spread, player props, same game parlay bets, live betting, all on an app that's safe, secure, and super easy to use. So sign up today with promo code Lucero for your no sweat first bet. That's LUCERO. Make every moment more this season with FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Must be 21 and present in Kansas. First online real money wager only. Refund issued as non-withdrawable free bets. It expires in 14 days. Restrictions apply. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. FanDuel is offering online sports wagering in Kansas under an agreement with Kansas Star Casino, LLC. Gambling problem? Getting help is your best bet. Call 1-800-522-4700 or visit ksgamblinghelp.com.
We'll take a quick break. We've got more 580 Sports Talk coming up after this. Back for just a few more minutes on 580 Sports Talk on this Wednesday afternoon. Just a heads up for you, we have a short show coming up tomorrow. We're off at 4:30 because of K-State men's basketball against the Roos of UMKC, or Kansas City, whatever they want to be called now. Hey, real quick, did you know that the Major League Baseball Cy Young Awards were being announced this afternoon?
I didn't until I just saw they announced the National League winner.
Yes, Sandy Alcantara of the Marlins, first Marlins pitcher to win the Cy Young. Yay or nay on that pick?
Yay. It was unanimous. It should have been. He's a workhorse. He's a stud. 30 out of 30 first place votes for Alcantara. And the no doubt, no-brainer winner of the Cy Young. The first one ever from the Marlins, and only the third ever from the Dominican Republic, joining Pedro Martinez and Bartolo Colon.
That's a pretty good one. Who do you think is going to win the AL?
Great question. I thought it was going to be Verlander. Cruise to it till he got hurt and missed a chunk of September. I still think he might edge it over Dylan Cease, but I don't know. Cease was there all year. I might have giving him the nod instead.
I kind of just want White Sox fans to whine and complain more. I don't think they do enough of that. So I think they could use to complain a little bit more. That's really what I think they could use.
Well, give it another hour and they'll announce it, because they have turned the announcement of these awards into a 2-hour show.
Don't you think you could just, I don't know, put out on Twitter, like, hey, here's what we're going to do. Put an ad on ESPN, like, I don't know, anything to allow people to know that this was happening?
Yeah, baseball just doesn't know how to do this stuff. They just don't. They
hire someone who does.
Like they did Rookies of the Year Monday, and we didn't even get to it on our show. Bobby Witt Jr. finished 4th in the Rookie of the Year voting. That's kind of neat. We didn't get to it on the program.
Who finished 3rd? Because I know it was Julio Rodriguez who won. 2nd would have been Rutschman.
And 3rd was, oh my gosh, how do I not know immediately who it was? It was killing me.
Don't worry, I'm pulling it up right now. Well, no, this is tremendous radio. Stephen Kwan.
Yeah, Stephen Kwan. Yep.
Okay,
Good
I guess
choice.
I get it.
Yeah.
Man, Witt finished a distant 4th.
Yeah, it was those
Interesting.
3 very clear of the field.
That makes sense. We've got to take one more time out. We'll wrap up 580 Sports Talk after this with the final word. Time to wrap up 580 Sports Talk with today's final word. Dan, you're first.
My 3 quick-fire biggest takeaways from Kansas's win over Duke last night in Indianapolis at the Champions Classic. Number 1, Jalen Wilson is ready to be the alpha dog. Number 2, DeJuan Harris is composed and playing like a top-tier point guard and following in a great KU point guard tradition. And number 3, Grady Dick is Himothy.
Yeah, my final word goes to the Champions Classic as well. That was an awesome performance. It was a sloppy game. It was an ugly game. It was a terribly officiated game, but still a good win for KU. You got everybody in the lineup, really everybody in the rotation involved to some degree. Jalen Wilson's got All-American potential this year. I'm not saying he's going to have a year as good as, say, Ochai Agbaji last season, but he's got the ability and he's got the trust of that coaching staff to go off and do what he needs to do to win a game. That was the second most shot attempts he took last night for any KU player under Bill Self. That is outrageous. Nobody in Roy Williams' tenure took 25-plus shots. Jalen Wilson did that last night, only the second ever under Bill Self. We're going to do that. We're going to talk all about KU, K-State, everything else coming up tomorrow on 580 Sports Talk from 3 to 4:30. We're off early for K-State Hoops. Until then, for Dan, I'm Brendan. We'll talk to you on 580 Sports Talk.